Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to the channel. UFC 286 Leon Edwards versus Kamaru Usman 3 is almost here. And in this video, I'm going to go through every fight on the pay-per-view main card, briefly discuss each fight, and then at the end of the video, I am going to grade UFC 286 on a scale from 1 to 10, 1 being the worst pay-per-view, 10 being the best pay-per-view, and I'm going to answer the question whether or not UFC 286 is worth your money. Now, before I get into any of my thoughts on this card, do me a favor, go check out the main card for UFC 286 and comment down below what grade 1 through 10 would you give UFC 286. Now, before I start going through the bout order, how do I grade a card? The three things that are most important to me when I grade a card is, first off, relevance to the division. Is this a prospect fight? Is this a number one contender fight? Does this fight have some type of title implications on the line? Could this be, could a winner of this fight be like one fight away from a title shot after this? Is it a championship level fight? The other thing is the skill level of both fighters. Are both guys an elite level fighter? Are they kind of like a middle of the pack type guy? Are they an absolute trash can? What are the skill level of both fighters? And then lastly, does the matchup have potential to be a fan-friendly matchup? Do I anticipate this particular fight, whatever fight I'm talking about, do I anticipate it to be an exciting fight? So starting off with the fight that opens up the main card, we have Marvin Vettori versus Roman Dolize. And I'll tell you this, before I even get into every fight on the main card, this is a very weird bout order for UFC 286, but this is the fight that opens up the main card. It is a middleweight fight. This is a fight that I'm actually really looking forward to because Roman Dolize right now is on a 4-fight winning streak. And, he is a guy that was unranked. He stepped in on short notice against Jack Hermansson after Derek Brunson pulled out and absolutely decimated him in the second round. First round was competitive. Jack Hermansson won the first round. The second round, he got Jack Hermansson to the ground and absolutely destroyed him. And now he is getting a massive test in Marvin Vettori, who I believe Marvin Vettori is currently sitting at number 4 in the UFC rankings, which is just insanity that Roman Dolize is going from unranked to now fighting Marvin Vettori, a former title challenger, a guy who's ranked in the top 5. And if Roman Dolize wins this fight, he's going to be in some title discussion. I don't know. It depends how the division plays out. We have Israel Adesanya trying to reclaim his belt against Alex Pereira at UFC 287. Depending on how that goes, if Pereira wins and then goes up to 205 afterwards, or Adesanya wins, there might be a trilogy. Roman Dolize, if he beats Marvin Vettori, will be in a very good spot within the division. And for Marvin Vettori, if Adesanya loses again, and maybe Pereira goes up, or even if Pereira doesn't go up, Marvin Vettori never has fought Alex Pereira. He's fought Israel Adesanya twice. So Marvin Vettori with the win here, he's kind of defending his ranking. I don't think he's going to get a title shot right afterwards. But I could see the winner of this fight, depending on how the middleweight division plays out, I could see them, being in the title picture in the next year or so, maybe 1-2 fights away from a potential title shot, depending on how the middleweight division plays out. And this is a very good stylistic match. And you have Marvin Vettori, we know how good he is. He's super durable, has great stamina, has good wrestling, has decent striking. He's not really particularly great anywhere, but he's a very well-rounded fighter. And for Roman Dolize, we're still kind of learning about Roman Dolize's skill set, but this is a massive test for him against Marvin Vettori. He looked excellent on the ground against Jack Hermansson. He's shown in the past he has brutal KO power. And now we're really going to get an answer. How does he do against the top tier middleweights in the division? And I think this is what makes that fight really interesting. I don't know how exciting this fight's going to be, but it's hard because sometimes Marvin Vettori is kind of like so good. He wins fights, but he's not particularly super exciting. But Roman Dolize, his last few fights have been really exciting. So I think this fight will be exciting, but it's hard to kind of gauge this one. But nonetheless, it's very important to the division, and both guys are very skilled. I'm really looking forward to that matchup. Moving on to the next fight on the main card, we have Gunnar Nelson versus Bryan Barberena. This is kind of a weird matchup. You have Gunnar Nelson, who's fought once since the end of 2019, and Gunnar Nelson has kind of gotten his name off of being a Conor McGregor groupie. I believe Gunnar Nelson at one point, people were claiming, oh, he's going to be a future title contender. all because he hung out and trained with Conor McGregor. And he never really lived up to that potential. He's lost 2 out of his last 3 fights. He's been inactive. You know, granted, he's losing names like Gilbert Burns and Santiago Ponzinibbio, but he's been very inactive. He had a fight last March. He won the fight via decision against Takashi Sato. Not super impressive, but nonetheless, he's back on the winning track. And he's taken on Bryan Barberena, who Bryan Barberena, don't get me wrong, he's an exciting fighter. He has some decent skills, but he's kind of like a gatekeeper for the top 15. He's coming off a loss against Rafael dos Anjos where he got submitted in the second round. And he's just been a guy that kind of has killed off some UFC legends like Robbie Lawler, Matt Brown. But he's been a guy that's always failed when he's had that next step up in competition. But I don't even know if Gunnar Nelson's really the next step up in competition, because Gunnar Nelson, again, he's been inactive. It's hard to gauge where his skill level's at. And I find this weird. I think this fight should definitely be behind Marvin Vettori, Romandelizae. But I think it should be an exciting fight. You know, Bryan Barberena, he goes out there, presses forward. He's a brawler. He's super exciting. He's super durable. But we know what Gunnar Nelson wants to do. Gunnar Nelson wants to go out there, take you down, use his jiu-jitsu to finish the fight. So, I don't think this is a particularly exciting matchup here. I don't think it's a particularly compelling matchup here. It has no implications on the division. Gunnar Nelson will never fight for a title. Bryan Barberena will never fight for a title. I doubt if they ever even made the top 15 in the welterweight division. But I do think they both are rather skilled. I don't think it's going to be the worst fight ever, but I think it's going to be Bryan Barberena worried about the takedown, Gunnar Nelson looking for the takedown, and if Gunnar Nelson gets it to the ground, I think most likely he will find a finish there. But again, it's still really hard to gauge where Gunnar Nelson is at because of the inactivity over the last few years. So this isn't a fight that I'm dying to see. It isn't, one of these fights that, oh my goodness, I can't wait to see this on the pay-per-view. This really belongs on the prelims, in my opinion. So I'm not dying to see this matchup, but Bryan Barberena usually is must watch. He goes out there and brawls. I just don't know if Gunnar Nelson is going to welcome that. I think he's just going to shoot in on takedowns and look to control him on the ground. Will he be successful? We'll find out at UFC 286. Moving up on the card to the featured fight on the main card. And honestly, I'm disgusted. This is a slap in the face by the UFC. They took UFC 286 and really just took a shit on it, because the featured fight on the main card is Joanne Wood versus Luana Carolina. What a horrible fight. This is a women's flyweight fight. I am not a person who constantly just hates on women's MMA. That is not me. I like watching Weili Zhang fight. There's plenty of fighters, women's fighters, that I enjoy watching fight. Joanne Wood versus Luana Carolina has no business being on the main card of a UFC pay-per-view. I don't even believe either one of these women belong in the UFC. And Joanne Wood, for a long time, the UFC and the commentary team tried to pretend like she was good, tried to pretend like she was a prospect. They were going to give her a title shot with a win over Jessica Evil Eye, back in 2021. But she's really not that good. And they just push her because she's from the UK. She's from Scotland. And this is a horrible fight. I don't even want to watch this, let alone on the main card. I wouldn't even want to see this on the televised prelims. This needs to be buried on the early prelims. This needs to be like the first fight on the card. That's how bad this fight is. And you have Joanne Woods on a 3-fight losing streak. You have Luana Carolina, who's on a 1-fight losing streak. But her last fight, she got brutally KO'd by Molly McCann. And Molly McCann, we've seen what Erin Blanchfield did to her. We saw what happened there. And Molly McCann, again, she's not even good, and she's KOing Luana Carolina. Luana Carolina's 8-3 in her pro MMA career. Joanne Woods 15-8 on a 3-fight losing streak. This has no relevance to the division. I don't think either one of these girls are skilled, and I don't think this is going to be a particularly exciting fight. I hate this fight. This actually brings down UFC 286 significantly. I really, really hate this fight, and I think the UFC, somebody needs to do something. I need some type of retribution against the UFC for this, because to saddle this right in the middle of the UFC 286 pay-per-view is really disrespectful, honestly. This is a horrible fight, and it ruins a card, honestly. It's a card ruiner. This is like back when they tried to do Miesha Tate versus Ketlin Vieira on the main card of UFC 276, or was it Miesha Tate versus Lauren Murphy? I can't even remember anymore. Luckily, that got canceled. I am hoping and praying to the MMA gods. somehow Joanne Wood, Luana Carolina, I hope they're in the best of health. I hope somehow they pull out of this fight. This fight gets canceled. This has no business being on a UFC pay-per-view in 2023. Both these girls need to be cut from the organization. Neither one of them will ever be a contender. Neither one of them even ranked in the top 15. And I don't know who's sitting around in an office somewhere at the UFC Apex or wherever they're at and said, yeah, let's put Joanne Wood versus Luana Carolina on the main card of UFC 286. I mean, I don't even think the fans from the UK want to see this. I'd be ashamed to go there live and have to put this on and watch this. I mean, the UFC should really be embarrassed. This is a horrible decision. And as you can see, I'm not happy about it. I hate this fight. Let's move on to some better fights. The co-main event on the card. Rafael Fiziev versus Justin Gaethje. What an incredible fight. I'm really looking forward to this. You have Justin Gaethje, who's ranked number 3. Rafael Fiziev, who's ranked number 6. You know, Fiziev's on a massive winning streak. Justin Gaethje's lost 2 out of his last 3. But he lost to Charles Oliveira in a title shot, and he lost to Khabib Nurmagomedov in a title shot. So this is a highly skilled fight. We've been complaining for, the last 2 years, maybe even longer, some of us longer, especially with the welterweight division. But with the lightweight division, we wanted to see some of the veterans who were at the top of the weight class give some of the up-and-coming guys like Arman Tsarukyan, Mateusz Gamrot, and Rafael Fiziev. We wanted to see some of those veteran guys, those staples in the division, give some of these contenders a chance to, make their name. And people were talking about Justin Gaethje doesn't want this fight, and Justin Gaethje's ducking Fiziev. He accepted the fight, and this is an amazing matchup. And this has relevance to the division. Justin Gaethje, even though he's had 2 title shots in his last 3 fights, he's never fought Islam Makhachev. And Rafael Fiziev, he's on a massive winning streak. A lot of people are super high on him. And if he goes out there and defeats Justin Gaethje, Rafael Fiziev could potentially, with this fight alone, he could steal a title shot from Beneil Dariush. If Rafael Fiziev wins this fight, even if Beneil Dariush beats Charles Oliveira, there is a chance that Fiziev could steal the title shot from him. But if Rafael Fiziev wins this fight and Dariush loses to Oliveira, I think Rafael Fiziev will be the number 1 contender, and we will see Islam Makhachev versus Rafael Fiziev. So this is a massive fight. Now, Justin Gaethje, I don't think with a win here, he'll be fighting for a title. But it's possible just because he's never fought Islam Makhachev. He would be at the top of the division. He would have defended his ranking against a savage in Rafael Fiziev who's coming up the ranks, younger than him, is on an incredible tear. And if Justin Gaethje can send him back to the back of the line for a title shot, Justin Gaethje puts himself in position. He's probably 1 fight away from a potential title shot. And when you look at these guys, you don't get a more fan-friendly stylistic matchup than Rafael Fiziev versus Justin Gaethje. Both guys elite level strikers. Justin Gaethje has never been in a boring fight. I've been watching him since the World Series of Fighting's days, and he is always in exciting fights. He's kind of dialed it back and fought a little bit smart more recently, but still, I mean, the fight against Charles Oliveira only lasted 1 round. Super exciting. The fight against Michael Chandler, particularly the first 2 rounds, super exciting. Justin Gaethje is very exciting, and Rafael Fiziev, I mean, his fight against Rafael Dos Anjos, 5th round KO. The fight before that, spinning heel kick KO over Brad Riddell. The fight before that, a crazy fight against Bobby Green. The fight before that, he absolutely starched Renato Moicano. This is a fan-friendly matchup. Both guys are the elite of the elite in the lightweight division, which is one of the best divisions in the UFC. And this has title implications. The only way that this fight could get any better, this co-main event of UFC 286 could get any better, is if it was 5 rounds. And I know there's going to be some people that say, oh, we don't need 5 rounds for this. Somebody's going to get finished. I would still like, on the off chance that this does go a hard 3 rounds, I wish this was a 5-round fight. But nonetheless, this is an incredible matchup. This is a matchup that I've been looking forward to since before it was announced. This was the fight to make. The UFC did a great job putting this fight together. And Justin Gaethje versus Rafael Fiziev should be a phenomenal fight regardless of who wins. Moving on to the main event, we have Leon Edwards versus Kamaru Usman 3 for the welterweight title. This is an incredible matchup. And this is an incredible storyline. I talked about this in a recent video. And you have a dominant champion in Kamaru Usman, who now lost his belt after winning the majority of the fight. And not only lost his belt, lost it in the last minute of the 5th round by brutal KO. Leon Edwards went out there and was losing the fight, looked defeated, and somehow snatches victory from the jaws of defeat by brutally KOing Kamaru Usman with that nasty head kick. And now Kamaru Usman, a former champion, has to return from the Shadow Realm to look to get his title back against Leon Edwards, a guy who now he's fighting him for a third time. The first fight, Kamaru Usman won, I think, 30-27. The second fight, he was winning, basically 4 rounds to 1. I know the 5th round he inevitably got knocked out, but had he got knocked out in the 5th round, the 5th round was going to be his. The only round he lost was when he got taken down in the 1st round. So Kamaru Usman was dominating the fight. He was a dominant champion. He hadn't lost in very many years. I don't think he had lost since all the way back in 2013 was his last loss before Leon Edwards. And Leon Edwards right now, he's the new welterweight champion. His last loss was to Kamaru Usman back in 2015. And now they're meeting for a trilogy. You have Leon Edwards saying, it was cardio issues because we were in Utah. And, I'll be much better in the trilogy. And then you have to wonder, how is Kamaru Usman's confidence going to be coming into this fight? Is he going to trust his chin? What is his strategy going to be? This is a very compelling matchup. To see a champion lose his belt in the way that Kamaru Usman did, and then for him to attempt to come back not that much longer after he lost the belt, this is a compelling matchup. I know some people like the drama, like the pushing and shoving, like the, going back and forth on social media. This is a fight that has an amazing storyline. I don't need any drama here. The storyline sells itself, and you have an amazing stylistic clash because Leon Edwards, while he's well-rounded, he is a striker. And Kamaru Usman, while he's well-rounded, he is a grappler. He is a wrestler. And Leon Edwards got taken down in the first fight. That's why he lost the first fight. The second fight, he was getting out-grappled in the second fight. How is he going to look? Is he going to be able to stuff the takedowns in the third fight and keep it on the feet and defeat Kamaru Usman? And if he's not able to KO Kamaru Usman, what does this fight look like? It's a very compelling matchup. Both guys are the elite of the elite in the welterweight division. And I think regardless of how this fight goes, I think it should be relatively exciting, especially early. It's all going to hinge on, can Leon Edwards stuff the takedown? Because I think Kamaru Usman in this fight, I think he's going to come out with a heavy grappling game plan. He won a lot of the striking exchanges in the second fight. But now I think he's going to be a little bit worried about getting caught with that big shot. So I think this fight has the potential to be really exciting if Leon Edwards can put up some resistance in terms of defending the takedown. And Leon Edwards has shown very good grappling. But Kamaru Usman seems to have his number, when it comes to the wrestling. So this fight should be very interesting. It's 2 elite level fighters. It has an amazing storyline, and it's for a title. So when I look at this main card overall, and I try to grade this main card, I really think this is a card that has 3 very good fights. You obviously have Leon Edwards, Kamaru Usman 3, Justin Gaethje, Rafael Fiziev, and you have Marvin Vettori, Romandelizae. The other 2 fights, Gunnar Nelson versus Bryan Barberena and Joanne Wood versus Luana Carolina, I could take it or leave them. I don't really care about them all that much. But I think what this grade hinges on is the fact that they put Joanne Wood versus Luana Carolina on the main card. And therefore, I cannot give the UFC a break for that. That is horrendous. That ruins this card. And I think this card isn't particularly stacked when you compare it to like UFC 285 or UFC 287, which is coming up in April. I think this card, is good. It's okay, but it's not anywhere near what UFC 285 and UFC 287 are looking like. And I think the fight, the fact that you have Gunnar Nelson versus Bryan Barberena, there's not really a whole lot of stakes on the line there. It's just kind of filling a spot on the main card. For my grade for UFC 286, I am giving it a 4.5. I thought about giving this a 5, but to shove some Luana Carolina versus Joanne Wood on the main card, I couldn't give it a 5. This has to be one of the worst built main cards I have ever seen. You could take 5 or 6 other fights, any of them, from the prelims, the early prelims, and you swap it out with Joanne versus Luana Carolina, and I think it makes the main card better. I would probably give it a 5. But ultimately, this is a 2-fight main card. There's going to be 2 fights that people truly care about. Now, I do care about Marvin Vettori versus Romandelizae, but that's not something, maybe that's a main event for a fight night card at the Apex or something along those lines. It's a decent fight. But what are going to make people most excited for this card is the co-main and main event. And I know that's mostly the case, but you look back at UFC 285. Stark contrast. What was the featured fight on UFC 285? Jeff Neal, Shavkat Rakhmonov. Compared to the featured fight on this card, Joanne Wood versus Luana Carolina, that diminishes the card. That brings down the grade. And that's why ultimately I had to give it a 4.5 out of 10. That's a disgrace of a fight on a pay-per-view main card. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments. What grade would you give UFC 286? Also, I've done 2 videos already on UFC 286, the top 3 things I love about UFC 286 and the top 3 things I hate. I will link those both down in the description as well as the end cards if you want to go check it after this. And if you enjoyed this video, do me a favor and like the video. And thank you so much for watching.